Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet an island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I want to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Martha A. Wilson. After a 27 years undercover with the CIA, Martha is an expert at handling ordinary people, uncover their hidden drivers, derailers, and showstoppers so they can do extraordinary things. Entrepreneurs and leaders hire Martha when they want to make a profound positive impact in the world while enjoying the time and money freedom to do what they want when they want. Martha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Deepak. It's so fantastic to be here with you. I'm excited to be with you today. Excited to talk to your people today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited. I've been, we had an initial conversation some time ago. I've been really looking forward to this. So I've never talked to anyone who worked with the CIA before. So we're going to start there. How does one even, we're going way back here. How does one even get into that role? Okay, we've all seen stuff, and I'm going to speak for my audience here a little bit. We've all watched the movies and TV shows and all that sort of thing. But how does one even fall into working with the CIA?
Well, first of all, before we go down that path, I just want to clear the air because it kind of becomes relevant as our conversation continues. But the first part of that is, in spite of what you see in Hollywood and on TV, CIA is not all about guns and badassery. CIA is 100% based on human behavior. And how I got there, it was really an interesting sort of series of circumstances. I mean, I had graduated from college. I had gone on active duty with the Army, and about 5 years into my Army career, I was like, pretty sure this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life, but I have no earthly idea what else was out there. I mean, I'm a girl from rural South Carolina. In rural South Carolina, little girls grow up to be school teachers or receptionists, and there is nothing wrong with either one of those, but it just didn't seem like a good fit for me. But I had no earthly idea of what else was out there. And through the course of my military career, I wound up in a couple of assignments that had me, coming in contact with CIA. And I was just fascinated by the whole thing. And I would go in to have conversations or official meetings with them on my official military business. And, the conversation would start it out. It was like, okay, here's the stuff I was here for. Now, tell me about your job. And then it was, so how'd you get your job? And then it was, so how could I get your job? And of course, they never gave me a straight answer to that. But what was interesting was it had really just put it on my radar. So about a year and a half later, when I decided that I was ready to graduate out of active duty Army and into the next version of my life, I went to a job fair. And
simple as a job fair? That's the exciting answer. Simple as a job fair.
Seriously. Well, that's the intro part. I mean, you submit your application, and after the application goes in, that's when all the adventures start. That's when you get the phone calls to come up for the polygraph, and to come up for the physical test, and to come up for the interview that lasts for an entire week. And then, another 8 months of, well, your application is still active. And then finally, one day you get the call and we're like, we're making you a conditional offer of employment. It's like, okay. And then you jump into the whole world of espionage tradecraft.
Interesting. Let me just, I just want to fill in a couple of gaps. So what did you study in school? What did you graduate with? And then what was your role in the Army? Like what type of position or rank or, so on and so forth?
Sure. So I, believe it or not, I studied Spanish in college and was also in ROTC. And like I said, when I was getting ready to graduate, I was like, well, what am I going to do with myself? And since I was already in ROTC, I was like, well, let me go on active duty If nothing else, my logic here at this point was, if nothing else, the Army will put a roof over my head and 3 squares on the table until I figure out what I want to be when I grow up. That was my logic. And that's kind of where it went. I came out of ROTC as a 2nd lieutenant, naturally, stayed in the Army on active duty all the way through captain, and then hung around via the reserves till I made major. Was working in military intelligence. Well, let me rephrase that. The insignia on my collar said military intelligence, but you'll appreciate this. My very first assignment with the Army was as the drug and alcohol education coordinator for the 2nd Infantry Division in Camp Casey, Korea. So here I am, a fine little 22-year-old girl going up to the DMZ, where all these fine strapping 18 to 25-year-old boys who have not seen anything female in at least 6 months. And I'm supposed to stand in front of them and say, there's something to do in Korea besides go out, get drunk, and fall in a turtle ditch. I was somewhat less than effective, but hey, at least I was entertaining, right?
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. I digress, and by no means am I trying to be insulting in any way or anything like that. I'm watching Narcos right now, and if you're familiar with that Netflix show, it's based in Colombia and Mexico and the drug trade and et cetera, et cetera. And like you said earlier, you can't, the CIA is not all bombs and guns and all that sort of thing. But I just kind of find it somewhat amusing you said Spanish, because I'm actively trying to learn Spanish, and I was like, obviously I'm not going to learn Spanish by watching a TV show, but just the correlation of like CIA, Spanish, and what you said before, and it's not all about overthrowing governments and put all that kind of stuff we see on TV. So how does then one go from 27 years in the CIA then to becoming a success coach?
Yeah, it's as often happens with all of us when we make these pivots in our life. I had been at this point with CIA for about 16 years. I had what I truly thought was the coolest job in the world. I mean, I'm having an adventure every single day. I'm living in parts of the world. Some of them I didn't even know where they were until I found out I was being assigned there. It's supposed to be the coolest job in the world. And I was absolutely miserable. And I was sitting there one day, sitting at my desk, head in my hands. I had just gotten off another terrible phone call with my boss where she had proceeded to rip me a new one about everything me and my team were or were not doing, getting her not getting the results that she wanted. And her answer, of course, was, you just need to work harder. And I'm like, I don't have any harder left to work. And I'm sitting there with my head in my hands. And I just hear myself say, I can't do this anymore. And the part that was so heartbreaking about it was I thought that in order for me to be successful at CIA, either CIA had to change to fit me, or I had to change to fit CIA. And the problem was I'd tried both of those already. And it just made me more miserable. And it's not that I hadn't been successful. I had, up until that point, I had a successful career. But I was so stretched thin, burned out, and unhappy. I didn't know what else to do. So I'm sitting there with my head in my hands, thinking, I can't do this anymore. And all of a sudden, I hear the words, hear the voice of an old Army captain coming back through my head, where he says, Lieutenant, when in charge, take charge. And I realized in that moment, it was time for me to take charge, not of my team or my time or my targets or all those things outside of me. But it was time for me to take charge of me, of what was actually driving me, what was actually going on in the background for me that was getting me the outer results, not just the outer results, but, or lack thereof, as the case may be, but also getting me the experience of feeling miserable and doing something about it. And I'm sitting there thinking, nobody on the planet cares that I'm miserable right now. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Nobody on the planet cares that I'm miserable right now, which means nobody on the planet cares that I choose to do something about it. That was the piece that opened it all up. That was the moment that I decided, all right, let's see how this really works. Let's see what's really going on here. All this time, my job was to understand what was driving everybody else, but it never occurred to me that my job was to figure out what was driving me. What was pushing me forward? What was the thing that made me unique, special, and different, and then bring that forward? And I knew it had to be something, because I had taken every personality test, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, DISC, strength deployment inventory. Heck, half of them I was certified in by that time. And according to all of those, I was in absolutely the perfect job. This was supposed to be a perfect fit. So the question was, then what's off? And then once I understood how to navigate that path for myself, how to open that space for myself, how to use all of these skills and talents that incidentally I was hired into CIA for, to figure out what was driving other people. As soon as I learned how to use those for myself, that was when I learned how to create my own opportunities, how to create my own openings. So, and just to be clear, I went on, like I said, this happened at the 16-year mark, but I spent 27 years with CIA. Mm-hmm. I recreated myself first inside that organization, and also as I started to recreate myself outside the organization as well. So that's where it all unfolded. From that point, I went on to get the highest cash award of my career. I had the best jobs of my career. I started having more fun. So I was still putting in hours, but it really felt like I was working less. That's also when I started my very own coaching practice for the very first time, all those many years ago. To fast forward from that, when it came time to graduate from CIA, that's when the opportunity to double my government salary via the C-level corporate position fell into my lap. I mean, these are the kinds of things that happen when you finally become the master of you.
So just to recap, so it sounded like way before this term was ever used, coaching became a side hustle for you while you were still at the CIA. And then there wasn't anything necessarily that you were itching to leave, but this great opportunity you said fell in your lap. You're like, oh, hey, this is a no-brainer. It's time to go. I put my time in. Is that basically?
It was a little bit of both, actually. As life does, it unfolded a couple of challenges for me right there at the end, and they were all financially related, which is fascinating because, the three pillars of the work that I do with my clients now are specifically focused on fulfillment, finances, and freedom. And I'll spare you the gory details of how this financial crisis unfolded, but suffice it to say, We had invested with someone as a private money lender. They reneged on the investments, had to step in front of that foreclosure. Suffice it to say, it wiped out about $250,000 worth of savings like that. And in exchange, we had this piece of real estate that was stripped down to studs and a slab, and trying to find a way to recoup and reestablish ourselves at that point. And, you know, they talk about the nudges from the universe, the taps from the universe. So I'm sitting there at my desk yet again. And this time I'm running the numbers. I'm figuring out, you know, how am I going to solve this problem? And as I'm sitting there, I hear this voice in my head. It's just, the one and only thing standing in the way of me solving the problem is my job. What? Because of course, when you are inside a job, the good news is you're on a fixed income. That beautiful paycheck shows up every 2 weeks. And the bad news is you're on a fixed income. That beautiful paycheck that shows up every 2 weeks is the only paycheck that's going to show up every 2 weeks. So where is the freedom to make the change in there? And at that point, I was eligible to what I call graduate from CIA. In other words, I was eligible to retire. So doing the illogical, which is stepping away from that reliable paycheck into retirement, just to give myself the flexibility to be able to solve this problem. And then when I was in that gap, when I was in that space, that was when the golden opportunity showed up, no pun intended there.
Yeah.
But you know, it really is, and this is so much a part of what I work with my Leaders Mastery clients on now. It's like getting yourself really, really clear on what is it you want to see in your life. And now let's find the path to get there. And it's, you know, you create the space, but stay open to the opportunity. Because you have one plan, and then there are all the opportunities that you didn't even think about as possibilities. And it's being prepared to receive that as it comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I like to say to people, just to your point a few minutes ago, is that, you know, to people I mentor or, you know, just friends, whatever, is like, you can't work on your business while you're working in somebody else's business, right? You know, type of thing. And then I love your last point too, is like, you know, we have to have that, you know, be open, or a growth mindset, or what you know, the various different terms, to even be able to receive what the universe wants to potentially send us as well. Martha, so, you know, we've talked before, you know, we hit the record button, and we don't know each other very well, but we've had a few conversations before, and you're a very, you know, positive and, like, you know, go-getter type of person. Has that always been you?
Well, I would like to say that I've always been a positive person, but the truth is I was not that goal getter, you know, put it up there. Yeah, let's take that. I was not that kind of person. I mean, I was the person who absolutely hated goals, because anytime even in CIA, you know, you go to your annual performance review and they're like, what's your goal for the coming year? And, you know, I'm just secretly to myself, I'm thinking, what, get through it, have good things happen. I mean, I hated goals because I felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't win. Like if I set a really big goal, every time I'd look at it, I'd be thinking, Martha, you're too far behind. You're never going to get there. Days are passing too fast. There's so many things you should be doing. You're not prepared, blah, 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 blah. So that didn't work. So then I thought, well, let me just set a smaller goal, one that I can hit. Only the problem was, since I set a smaller goal and it wasn't the thing that I really wanted, either I'd hit the goal and I'd be like, who cares? It doesn't matter anyway. It wasn't what I wanted. Or I wouldn't do anything at all. And then what I'm hearing in my head was, well, heck, you can't even hit a little goal. Why on earth would you go for a big one? So then I tried just not having any goals at all. And let's just let the chips fall where they may. But then the problem with that was I'm working all the time. I can't tell if I'm getting any closer. And if I do get something that I actually want, it feels like a happy accident as opposed to something I can actually repeat. So this whole experience of me uncovering what the heck is it with goals and how do I actually make them work for me? Everybody kept saying goals are supposed to be motivating and inspiring and drawing you forward. And I'm like, on what planet is that? Because it's not mine. So that's when I really started looking at, all right, what is going on with me and the goals? And discovering all of this, all of the ways that the hidden programming inside of us comes together around our particular goal, and the ways that it often stops us in our tracks. But also recognizing that so many of the other success coaches out there will tell you to suck it up, muscle through, feel the fear and do it anyway. Just knock it down, break through, overcome. And I was like, that's exhausting. There's got to be a better approach. And that's what I set myself to find, which I did.
So what do you think is the primary thing that keeps people from, being consistent in their actions and towards their, again, air quote goals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I've discovered over time is it's this concept of hidden programming, all of this that's running in the background for you, that's driving every decision you make, every action you take or don't take, and the results of those actions, regardless of whether or not you did everything right. And hidden programming, just if you've not heard that term before, your hidden programming is that invisible, unquestioned truth about who you are, who they are, and what the world is. And it drives everything, which is precisely why when it starts to run in the background and somebody set this big goal and out in front of them, but you've got this hidden programming that says it's not okay for me to want that. Or in order for me to get that, I'm going to have to work really hard. I'll have to give something up. It's not possible. It's not possible for me. Maybe other people can do it, but I can't do it. And this is the part of you that's running behind the scenes that you don't even recognize is there, which is the piece that will drive your actions or inactions, as the case may be. And that's the part that leaves them stuck in that procrastination, chaos, burnout cycle.
Absolutely. How much do you think is, okay, this is going to be a terrible question because it's a multi-parter, but how much, I think we all recognize, that sort of that nurture piece of, what we're exposed to as children and that sort of thing. So I'd love to you touch on that part, but how much do you think is maybe there's also some inherited, maybe it's, I don't use the word trauma, it could be trauma, but there's that inherited piece that could be multi-generation versus even just our, let's say, the first 5-10 years of our life, as far as those limiting beliefs and what we've gotten from our family and our experiences, et cetera.
Yeah, 100%. So number one, both and the first piece to consider is hidden programming is not just limiting beliefs. It's not just mindset. It's not just limiting beliefs, because those things live up here. And that's part of it, yes. But the hidden programming is the part of you that will slam on the brakes and jerk the steering wheel in the split second before you have the thought, that SOB just cut in front of me. It's inside your body. It's inside your entire experience of yourself as a human. So to take your point, how far back does it go? I absolutely believe that it is generational, and we can have this conversation from a couple of different sides. We can walk into this conversation through the doorway of Jungian psychology. We can walk into the conversation through the doorway of energy psychology. You can walk in through the doorway of trauma. Either way, you wind up in the same room. Because think of it this way: even if one might be skeptical of, generational coming down, and I will tell you, I fully believe that it does, because let's look at it from a very logical perspective. You as a child picked up some programming from your parents. Where did your parents get their programming?
Their parents.
From their parents. And where did theirs come from?
Their parents, the church, et cetera, whatever other institution.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we have that piece of it. But the other piece that we also have is, let's think about the time where you were still cooking in mama's tummy. If mom was stressed, worried, anxious, all of those stress hormones are running through her system. That is the soup that your little body's cooking in. And just like crack babies get born addicted to crack, if you cooked in that stress soup, you come into the world with a certain level of stress as feeling normal to you. And to the subconscious mind, any departure from the familiar is perceived as a threat, even if the familiar is suboptimal. So that's why this hidden programming piece is so much deeper than just mindset and limiting beliefs. This is the part that actually kicks off the limiting belief.
Absolutely. And you said for a moment, a few minutes ago, for those who are skeptical, we have done the science on animals. We know this to be true. And if anyone thinks okay, yeah, we're not rats, we're not dogs, but to think that we are any different, we are still mammals, that we would not carry those same type of traits that we have scientifically proven in rodents and so forth, is I think you're just fooling yourself. So yeah, we are humans, we're mammals, and absolutely. And I don't think, Martha, I've shared this with you in our brief conversations we've had before. I certainly have shared this publicly in various forums in the past, in the last year. But last year, almost coming on a year ago now, I had a series of events that transpired. Again, speak to the universe, trying to tell me something, right? I did some personal development work, and a lot of things from my childhood came up, which I'm still processing and trying to better understand and what have you. So you're absolutely right. That mindset and motivation, drive, that's kind of up here, but there's a lot of stuff underneath the water, so to speak, right?
Yeah. And there's one other piece of it that I think is so critically important, and that is, there for a while in the personal development movement, it was all about, let's overcome this, let's heal this. And by the way, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I absolutely hate that word, because that means there's something wrong with you, there's something broken. Nothing's broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. I mean, every single thing that has happened with you, for you, through you, and to you has come together to bring you to this point right here today, including all of your hidden programming. Now, here's where it gets really cool, and here's where it gets juicy, and here's where the world of espionage comes into play. So, is it okay if I tell a short little spy story?
If it's about the CIA, absolutely. Yes.
So your first 90 days on the ground in any new city in the world of espionage, your first 90 days on the ground is all about figuring out, what does normal look like here? How do the patterns work here? How does traffic flow? What do people do? How do people act? So, for example, have you ever been to a city where in this particular city, it's almost like they roll up the streets at 8 p.m. There are no restaurants open. There's nobody on the street. The streets are completely empty. And yet you go to another city and that's when it's just coming to life. The people are going out. They're moving about. You'll go to another city and the traffic lines on the road, you know, the red line or the yellow lines and the white lines, everyone stays very neatly and properly in line, and they follow, and the light turns red and they stop, and the right turns green and they go, and it's all nice and orderly. And then you go to another city and all those lines and lights, yeah, they're just decoration. And cars are everywhere. Everything is willy-nilly.
And bicycles. Don't forget bicycles.
Exactly. Well, and to that point as well, there'll be some cities where there are people on bicycles everywhere. Other cities, you don't see a bicycle at all. There are some places where people walk everywhere. Others, there's never a person on the street. Others, people are walking, but they don't stand. Other places, they stand, but they don't walk. So the world of espionage, when you come into a new city, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for the pattern that is essentially running through that city. Because when you're out to conduct a clandestine act, number one, the last thing you want to do is stand out. And number two, if you're conducting a clandestine act and something goes badly wrong, falling back into that pattern that exists is the thing that will very literally save your life and the life of your asset. The same thing is true with human beings. When you can reverse engineer, when you, first of all, identify the pattern that your hidden programming creates, you'll notice, you'll begin to understand how you react in a specific situation. You can use that pattern. And this is where people keep getting it wrong. They want to break the pattern. But number one, it's really, really hard to do because those patterns were forged in fire. They are the thing that got you where you are, which is why it's so incredibly hard to do. And even if you were able to do it, you'd wind up throwing out the baby with the bathwater because those patterns are very literally your greatest strength. That's why you've been powerless against them up until now. They are stronger than you are. What I do is I show you how to reverse engineer those patterns. In the world of espionage, when you understand how a pattern in a city works, you can actually use that pattern and start to manipulate that pattern to create the opening you need to conduct your clandestine act. That's the same thing I teach you to do with your own internal patterns, is to use that pattern to create the opportunity, to create the opening that you need to create your next miracle, whatever it is.
Okay, so I have two questions from this story. So I guess number one, maybe that's a question, more of a statement. So in your former world, I would assume that when you see pattern breaks or pattern interruptions, that would be a key. Something is up.
Yep.
Like, why is the street quiet? It shouldn't be quiet right now. I'm just going to make something up here. The terrorists have told everyone, they know something's going down, so everyone stayed inside because something, that's the kind of thing, right? And then from a more personal point of view, I guess what I'm hearing you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is if, let's say, Deepak's default is when XYZ happens, Deepak gets upset in an outwardly sort of vocal tone. So instead of trying to break it, which is very difficult, as, okay, I will not say anything, I'll keep it in, to use your words, reverse engineer. So Deepak comes out verbally, but in a different tone than his default would be, which let's say is anger or yelling, but to respond in an outwardly motion, but in a more calm way, or maybe of a questioning way, something that's less threatening. Whatever, is that, am I kind of along the right path here?
You're kind of in there, but we're going to take it even further because we're going to first start to see what is the thing that caused the anger to fire off in the first place. What was the thing that triggered the pattern? Because as soon as we can understand what caused the pattern, now we can start to understand why it's running. So that's PowerPoint number one, which is when you can, your ability, your capacity to use a pattern is directly proportional to your ability to understand why it's running. And I don't mean why in a general broad sense, like, you know, my daddy used to criticize me all the time when I was a kid. I don't mean that. I mean, why is it running in this precise moment in time? Because just understanding that will slow the train down. So, great. Then the next piece is, all right, the energy is coming, the energy is running. Now it's about, instead of trying to choke that down or stuff it down, which is even what often happens when we are trying to not get angry and quietly and professionally express our displeasure with this event that has just unfolded. The whole time, everything back and sort of, we actually give you tools so you can move that. Let it be there. Let it go. Only it doesn't go out on them, nor does it come in on you, but rather give you a chance to actually harness that energy, because anger in particular is one that people struggle to work with. And it's also one of the most valuable energies you've got. Because anger, true, pure, refined anger unrefined, like thick black smoke. It hurts people, it hurts you, it hurts other people. It's not nice. But anger refined becomes courage. When you take all of that anger and you let the energy of the anger be there, it's the piece that turns into courage. It's the only part of you that is strong enough to shout down your own inner critic. It's the only part of you that is strong enough to go for that outrageous, miraculous goal that's not possible on any logical level. It is that anger, that true anger, refined. It's the piece that opens opportunities, but you have to be able to get in touch with it.
I love that. I've never heard it expressed that way before. Yeah, that's lovely. And definitely some food for thought for people who are, and we all have it to some degree, right? But for maybe those who are a little bit more not where they want to be in how they present themselves sometimes. Maybe that's definitely some food for thought there. I have a couple more questions before we wrap up, Martha, but I do want to make sure that everyone gets to know about a gift that you have for the audience. So can you maybe, and we'll have the link and I'll say it in a moment, but maybe you just explain what that gift is for everyone.
Yeah. So I have a free mini course. It's called CIA Spy Secrets to Making Goals Work for You. And it will take you through 3 different processes to understand what happens in you, what's the pattern in you when you decide to go for a goal. So you can start to see where are the places as this programming starts to run and it creates a pattern. What then happens downstream? Does it turn into procrastination? Does it turn into chaos? And what is your biggest blind spot? And oh, by the way, the other side of a blind spot is your biggest opening, your biggest opportunity. The easiest way forward for you to slip through that little gap in resistance and move right on through to your goal.
You know, that's funny. I've never heard that put that way either. The opposite side of your biggest blind spot is your biggest opportunity. That's interesting. And we don't need to go down this path, but I personally believe, in the last, well, for a long time, but certainly the last 4 years, there's been a lot of blind spots I think people have on a variety of topics. And I mean, we don't need to dwell on that, but just putting that different construct on it, that look around the other side and there's your biggest opportunity as well. It's that's unique. That's something I'm going to have to ponder that one. I'm going to have to ponder that one for sure. And we're going to have the link in the notes and in the description as well. But it is www.marthaawilson.com/deep Deepak. So marthaawilson.com/my name, where you can get that gift, and definitely check out people. I'll be definitely checking that out as well. Now, Martha, obviously, as you know, I'm all about health and longevity and anti-aging, but this podcast is not about that. We have a variety of topics, obviously, but I do like to ask my guests, what does your health routine or your morning routine, like, what does that look like for you on a daily basis?
Oh, I love that question. And I love that you're asking it of me today, because my preferred morning routine is I get up, I don't get up. I enjoy a luxurious cup of coffee in the bed with my husband because I can. And then I get up and usually work out for 15, 20 minutes, go for a walk, which is for me a combination of edutainment, movement, and kind of a moving meditation sort of thing. Come back in, shower, clean up, get ready for the rest of the day. And the reason I say it's curious to me or interesting to me that you're asking me this question today is I've recently noticed some changes in my body, that my body is not liking that routine anymore. That the workouts that I used to do, all of a sudden my knee doesn't want to play along. All of a sudden I've got an ankle that doesn't want to walk the 3 miles that we normally do. And I'm like, okay, what's up with this? Now I'm in this exploration of what's my body asking for now, and what is the change that it wants from me. So that's kind of where I am at this point.
I love that answer. And, and I think, to all the audience as well, don't be so, be open to questioning what your body is telling you and what you need. So, don't be so dogmatic. Well, I'm a swimmer, so I have to do my 50 laps, even though my shoulder is hurting, or I'm a runner and I have to do my whatever, even though I have knee pain. And it's like, mix it up, be open to doing other things, and don't be so but more importantly, whether it be physical or even, intuitively eating or what have you, like, listen to your body. Your body knows, that all the stuff we've been talking almost, throughout the whole interview, right?
Right.
Throw it on yourself, in this fashion from a physical or health point of view as well. Okay, one more question in this vein. Yeah, and obviously, being in ROTC and then the military, so obviously you have to keep a level of fitness. But if you had to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, some period earlier, specifically around health, what advice would you give your younger self about health?
Precisely what you just said. Listen to your body, because I didn't. I mean, I blew my ACL in high school water skiing. At that time, they anterior cruciate ligament in the right knee, for those people who haven't had that glorious personally developing experience. I blew that when I was in high school. And at that time, where medical technology was, they advised me not to do anything about it. So I had no physical therapy. I didn't get it fixed for 7 years. 7 years. And in that 7 years, that was when I joined the Army. So, bayonet courses, obstacle courses, physical training in the Army, et cetera. Marching. It got to the point that I couldn't trust myself to walk down the stairs because I didn't know if my knee would be there or not. This was back in the days when aerobics was a thing, and I was teaching aerobics. It would be nothing at all for me to dislocate my knee in the middle of the class that I was teaching, get a student to help me straighten my leg, and then stand up and teach the rest of the class.
Wow.
I never listened to my body. I abused the heck out of it. And as a result, I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know what it needed. I didn't know what it was trying to tell me. And every time something hurt, I would just tell myself to suck it up and muscle through. And now we're in a re-education process.
Martha, do you have one, obviously with strictest confidentiality and whatever, do you have like one really juicy, interesting CIA story that our mutual friend told me to ask? So
I have one rather humorous one that, so to set the scene, there was a target, which is a person that I wanted to get close to, that I wanted to make a pitch to recruit, to provide, non-public information of use to U.S. policymakers. That's what we call a pitch. And it was actually his wife that I was friends with. And he was posted in another country. He had come to visit, and she was finally pregnant with their first baby. And so she was going back home, and they invited me to come back with them so that I could see the baby and visit with them. And I'm like, okay, this is the opportunity that I need to get to know him better and connect with him and make my pitch. So I go on the trip and I go visit them. They were in the mountains of a Southeast Asian country, out in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful, but out in the middle of nowhere. And we go in and I walk in, and there's the husband and there's the wife, and there's this elderly woman. And as we come in, the wife introduces me and says, "This is my mother-in-law. We only have 2 bedrooms here, so the 2 of you will be sharing a bedroom." Okay, until we walk into the bedroom. There was 1 bed. So she and I, perfect stranger, are now sharing a bed. And we're laying there as 2 women do right before they go to sleep. We're just talking. And she's chattering away, and she's like, "Yes, my son has just gotten hired at the intelligence organization, and I am so excited for him. I am so proud." And I'm laying there the whole time thinking, and I am betting he wishes you hadn't told me that. And nowhere in the fine print when I was hired with CIA did it tell me that I would be sleeping with the mother-in-law.
Things you have to do for your country, right?
Yeah, right? Oh
Funny,
my gosh.
funny.
Yeah. Lots and lots of fascinating, curious stories.
So
That-
Martha, we're gonna have of course all the links, the link I said earlier, and where people can
Mhm.
find you and all that sort of thing. Is there anyone last words of wisdom or golden nugget for the audience today before we wrap up?
If there were only one message that I could leave you with, that I could leave them with, it would be this. There's no part of you that is broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. And there is far, far more magnificence inside of you than you have even imagined yet.
I love that. I think that's fantastic, and more people need to take that to heart, I think, for sure. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a guest today. I really appreciate your time today.
Love it. Love connecting with you, and can't wait to see what else we can stir up together.
Oh, awesome. I'm sure we're going to do some interesting things together. Maybe before we go, you do have, people are going to see this sometime in the future, but people who are going to see this relatively close to when we release this episode, you have an upcoming summit. Do you want to just maybe really take one quick second or a minute or so and explain what you're up to in there?
Yeah. No, I'm really, really excited about it. It's called the Fulfillment Summit. How to make a bigger difference and enjoy the ride along the way without procrastination, chaos, and burnout. And I am getting together more than 17 at this point, fabulous experts. Of course, you are one of them, and I'm thrilled to have you there, talking about, what is it? What is it that sucks us into that whole procrastination, chaos, burnout cycle? And how do we navigate that? How do we make a bigger difference? What does making a difference look like to you? And how do you keep yourself moving forward and making that bigger difference and making sure that you can, in fact, enjoy the fulfillment and the finances and the freedom so you can make that bigger difference in a sustainable way for the long haul? So, like I said, we've got 17 experts at this point sharing their nuggets of wisdom. It's all completely free, and details will be coming soon at thefulfillmentsummit.com.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it. And yeah, definitely, if you see this episode right away, definitely check out the summit. And even if you miss it and you catch this episode later, check out Martha's website and the free course, the free gift she offered earlier. Again, Martha, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it and your time. And we could go on for another hour, absolutely. And maybe we'll do a round two at some point. We'll see. So I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii to guide us out with some music. Thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you. Till next time.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company,